Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Real Steel, where we talk all things Pittsburgh Steelers. No BS, just the real steel. I'm your host, Jeff, joined as always by my co-host, Polt. Pittsburgh Steelers get another tally in the win column, 6-4. A win at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, 34-12. Polt led by none other than the best backup quarterback in the entire NFL, Mason Rudolph. Pretty convincing win here for the Steelers. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of talk on that, so I'm going to ignore that last comment. But yeah, very, very convincing win. I feel like the majority of the game played a lot closer than that final score ended up being. But I do also feel like we dominated the game and were in control pretty much the whole time, even though we struggled a bit in the first half. So yeah, it was good retribution for what happened on Thursday night in Cincinnati.
For sure, we needed the win against Cincinnati. We needed the revenge against them
Yeah,
based on what happened last time we played them. The defense really showed up this game. I mean, two
man.
touchdowns scored by the defense and one touchdown allowed by the defense. So that's pretty good, pretty great stats to have in your corner there. We're gonna dive into it. There's plenty of things that we can talk about from a defensive perspective, but I think a big story, which we'll definitely have to cover here, is about halfway through the game, Aaron Rodgers is sidelined for a wrist injury, and Mason
Yep.
Rudolph comes in and does a really solid job. He does everything you would
Yeah.
want a backup quarterback to do, putting together some really well-sustained drives, getting some scores on the board, some points on the board, and it felt good. Felt good to kind of see that and have the team function as you would love to see. Right? You mentioned it felt maybe a little closer, but this is probably one of the few times in recent memory that we weren't really stressed out about a game or felt like it was kind of coming down to the wire. Pretty convincing to have a multi-score lead and win, not just two scores. We won this game by 26 points, so 22 points, 24 points. My math is awful. 22
No, it's
points.
22. You were right. Yeah.
22 points. So three-score game. Great win overall, I would say, for the team.
Yeah. I mean, and I will say I predicted a two-score win, and you looked at me like I was crazy last week. I was close. 33-20 is what I predicted. So
Okay.
not a horrible guess, but yeah, I agree. I mean, this was probably the first time all year that we went into the fourth quarter. Like even the games we won that we had big leads, like the Vikings or I'm trying to think of another one a couple weeks ago, the Colts. Like those we were a little worried about, or at least I
Hmm.
was. This game, I kind of felt like we had total control. And that's crazy to say in a game that ended 10-6 at the end of the first half.
True.
And your starting quarterback is out for, at the time, we didn't know how long, but ended up being the entire second half. So to be able to say that and only have two drives in the second half is pretty crazy to all put together. But yeah, the Steelers absolutely dominated, led by the defense in the second half. And it was fun to sit there and watch. It finally was an enjoyable Pittsburgh Steelers Sunday.
Yeah, stress-free Sunday, which is nice. Let's talk a little bit about the offense because it wasn't just Aaron Rodgers that got hurt and found himself on the bench, but
Yeah.
Jalen Warren, same thing. And I think the rumors from at least what I've heard or what I've read is that he could have gone back into the game, but Kenneth Gainwell at that point kind of had a hot hand, and so he ultimately stayed in the game. And that's the reason Warren didn't get back in. But Warren was playing very good prior to his departure. Not a lot of production from from the wide receiver room, particularly DK Metcalf again, which
Yeah.
I think is something that I mean, 50 yards almost in terms of his stats, 5 catches. But I think my bold prediction was that this was kind of going to be a breakout game, right? I mean,
It
the
was.
Cincinnati Bengals had the worst defense, and they've been allowing 30 odd points um,
Yeah.
per team or per week. And you look at our defense put up multiple scores on the board, so our offense wasn't overly productive or as maybe as productive as we would have even wanted. Can't get greedy here, but it's not like it was a super flashy offensive game either when you're playing the worst defense in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that is something to keep in perspective. I mean, now the game script completely changes if the two defensive scores don't happen, but we did only win if you go by total offensive scores 20-12, which is a lot closer of a game, but again, they only had two drives in the entire second half. because first of all, those two drives took half of a quarter each almost, and we had two defensive scores in the second half. So, yeah, you have to look at everything as a whole. You can't look at things in a vacuum. But I will say that what I liked about the DK stuff, he might not have had a huge game, but they seem to make it a priority to get him the ball,
Sure, sure.
especially early in the game. The first couple drives, they were targeting him a lot, whether it's a screen pass, a quick slant, whatever it may be, because I think they realized they needed to get him involved. But time and time again, like we keep talking about, we just don't have anybody else to scare a defense, and it's way too easy to just double team him and take him out of the game, and that seemed to be the theme once again this week.
Yeah, and it does look like, I mean, I went back and watched a video of all the routes that Roman Wilson ran, and I
Yeah,
think this was maybe, correct me if I'm wrong here if you have snap counts, but I think this might have been the first game where Roman Wilson outsnapped Calvin Austin at the wide receiver 2 position.
by a lot.
And yeah, and so I think the team is migrating towards that in terms of actually trying to utilize Roman Wilson as a wide receiver too. He had a really, really great release off the line of scrimmage where he caught that third and long play that Mason threw to him to
Yeah,
extend a drive there. Great, great play to get open, and I like what I'm seeing more and more with Roman Wilson. I mean, he had that terrible hurdle fumble thing a few weeks back, but I think we gotta try to utilize him a little bit more. He's going to be open if DK is
yeah.
going to have multiple people swarming around him. I think on that play in particular, 3 people picked up DK. And so good on Mason to obviously make the throw and see that he was open. But I really hope and expect that we would see a lot more of Roman Wilson moving forward. And quite frankly, coming up this week against the Bears, I really wouldn't be surprised if this is the week that MVS gets elevated up to our active roster and we start to see some of that. I don't know,
Yeah.
but time will tell.
No, it is really interesting, and to give you numbers to that, Roman Wilson played 37 snaps or 57% of the offensive snaps, whereas Calvin Austin only played 19 or 29% of the snaps. And you could say, I mean, Darnell Washington played 71%, Pat Fryermuth played 46, Johnny Smith played 54, even Connor Hayward played 8. So they were in a lot of multiple tight end sets, and that obviously will limit the amount of wide receiver snaps, especially when they have three tight ends. But I do think it might be fair to say Roman Wilson has surpassed Calvin Austin as our second wide receiver.
Hmm.
And I don't like you said, I don't know if that's a bad thing. I'm actually kind of happy about it. He's taken some steps forward. Might not have the rapport with Aaron Rodgers as Calvin Austin does yet, but I mean, he's running good routes. He's getting open at times, and he's making plays when he has the ball in his hands. And I do think he is a slightly better receiver than Calvin Austin, maybe overall, and can maybe help us a little bit. So it is interesting that his snap counts have just kept going up.
Yeah, I mean, again, I wonder if the MVS Marquez Valdez-Scantling move will uh, show face, like if we'll actually see him get elevated and
Yeah.
what happens there, or if they really want to try to mold Roman Wilson into this wide receiver too, and see if he's going to continue to outsnap and actually, it's great that he's getting snaps and running routes and on the field, but we got to
Yeah.
see the production too, right? Like he has to be getting open, he has to have the chemistry with his quarterback. We have to see that ultimately come true. So that's, I think, kind of what I'm looking for over the next few weeks is to really see if it's a known hole. We've talked about it pretty much every episode. We don't really have that wide receiver too, and so
No.
if he's a guy that is going to be that person or that player, it has to kind of make itself known the second half of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like you said, MVS will be interesting. We'll see. They chose not to pick him up or put him on the active roster this week. They let Scotty Miller play, who only played 2 snaps. So we'll see. That receiver room is going to be a revolving door, I think. But I think we have to mention that the tight ends played a huge role in this game, specifically Darnell Washington. And it brings back the stat that's kind of funny because game script really drives this stat. But when he plays over 40 offensive snaps, they're 9-0 with 111 rushing yards per game, 9 rushing touchdowns, and outscoring opponents 231 to 151. I mean, that's a big difference. And again, game script and how the flow of the game goes really dominates that because he's not as dynamic of a pass catcher. But
I would argue he
Well,
should
I
eat.
was gonna say four catches for 67 yards with that great 31-yard third down conversion catch. That was phenomenal. That he got an Angry Run Award for from Kyle
Hmm.
Brandt on Good
Hmm.
Morning Football. Yeah, he was kind of the star of the show, I think, in this game. Him or Kenneth Gainwell, who we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, Darnell Washington really came onto the scene.
It gave me that the it made me think back to what was it, the Vance McDonald
Yep,
catch where he had a stiff arm, and I believe he ran it in for a touchdown,
he
but
did.
still, that was like just an iconic
Yeah,
tight end play by the Steelers, and there is a lot of chatter right now around Darnell Washington, and it's kind of like, damn, why haven't we utilized him in this aspect before? I
yeah,
mean, I'm sure it's hard to get him out in the middle of the field, and he's, a kind of a bigger and slower guy that might not
yeah.
always be open all the time, but he has great hands. He can move. He's really, really hard to bring down. Um, Mike Tomlin, I think, got asked in his press conference something around like, is Darnell getting better, or are you discovering more about him? And Mike Tomlin said something along the lines of like, we knew he had it. It just hadn't. We haven't like fully brought everything out yet.
Right.
And I think they're starting to realize that, and I hope that we continue to get Darnell Washington involved more because, man, he is fun to watch. So it's definitely the best play of the game.
Yeah, and it was so exciting, and that shirt from Kyle Brandt looks awesome. I might have to get myself one. It's so cool. But I think the cool thing with Darnell Washington too is we talk about how predictable of an offense we can be. Well, a lot of times when he's on the field, we're going to try to run the ball and pound the ball and be in heavy sets. But if he's going to have 67 yards on four catches, it makes it a little bit harder to predict because he's not just on the field for running plays; he's on the field for passing plays too, and being like utilized in passing situations, which again makes it harder for defenses to kind of key in on our running game, and maybe that does open up some holes or some lighter boxes. Because they're scared of Darnell Washington. So from that regard to scheme, I think he plays a huge role in this offense moving forward.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see more of it. He's quickly becoming like one of my favorite players this season to
Yeah,
watch.
he's the best.
He's dynamic, he's fun, he's a big dude, and like he loves it. And I think the team rallies around him too, which is really great to see. That said, I do think that going into the season, we thought that guys like Pat Fryermuth and Jonnu Smith were going to step up into a more primary receiving role.
Yeah,
Yesterday, Pat Fryermuth one catch for 19 yards. Not yesterday, Sunday when the game was. And Jonnu Smith was targeted twice with no catches. I think for what these guys are getting paid and what we would expect in terms of like dynamic pass catchers with running ability, that you would see, I don't know, more usage, more production, especially when we're talking about DK being double, triple covered. So that I
yeah.
think is one thing we also need to sort out a little bit.
Yeah, and like the wide receiver two conversation, we've mentioned this too. I don't know how they haven't tried to implement Jonnu Smith as a wide receiver two and let him
Yeah.
kind of play that role. He's dynamic, and he had 900 yards last year. Let him play a little bit. So yeah, we've yet to see that, and I'm eagerly waiting for it.
You want to talk Kenneth Gainwell? You want to talk running game? Or you want
I
to
think we have to.
talk about quarterback too? So
Yeah, we'll talk about quarterback. We could be quick on the running game. I mean, Jalen Warren, as you mentioned, went out at halftime, around a little maybe early third quarter with that injury, and
but
he
10
came in
carries for 62 yards is what
right.
Jalen
10
Warren
carries
had.
for 62 yards, looked great. I thought he ran the ball well. I thought Caleb Johnson actually 5 for 15 doesn't
Hmm.
look good, but he had that one long run that got called back for his own face mask. I thought he ran pretty hard, and he looks better and better each week. But Kenneth Gainwell was the star of the show, and Tomlin claims is the reason why Warren didn't play. I know we've been harping on the Warren Gainwell snap counts, and Gainwell was in there again on goal to go, and Warren wasn't, which that's ridiculous. But Gainwell had an awesome game, and I actually agree with Tomlin's decision to sit Warren. Warren is our best running back, and we need him moving forward. So keeping him healthy is really, really important. And Gainwell had 7 catches for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, the guy was just. He had a one-handed catch from Mason. That was a screen pass in the
Yeah,
fourth quarter.
great
That was a
catch.
really nice catch. He had 2 touchdown catches that were nice. He looked really good, and honestly, like one of our best players on offense in this game.
I totally agree. Like he looked so dynamic. I'm trying to find the stat here. He's the first running back to have over 100 plus yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns since I think James Conner in
Wow.
2018. So pretty impressive there. I can go back and try to find that stat, but he just looked great. I mean, he
Yeah.
has really shown that when the team needs him, he can step up. Like you go back to, was it it was the game in
Minnesota.
Dublin,
Yep.
yeah, Minnesota game where Jalen Warren was a scratch or he didn't play, he was hurt, whatever. And Kenneth Gainwell got the start, and he absolutely went off. Like he really is I mean, such a quality guy, and he's a player, and he's probably a great team player and great in the locker
Yeah.
room too, because you look at where he came from, right? Like he won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, so this guy's a vet. He knows like he knows his stuff, and it's probably a great person to have in that running back room. So kudos to Kenneth Gainwell. I loved watching him, and I agree. Probably a good call by Mike Tomlin. We're not going to agree with every call that Mike Tomlin
No.
makes. We're going to talk about one on
And we talk
defense
about
for
yeah.
this upcoming week that we're probably not too happy about. But I think this was a really good move with Kenneth Gainwell, and it's great when you have two backs that are going to be this dynamic. So
Right. Yep. I couldn't agree more.
all right, quarterback. This is a big thing to talk about here, and
Yep.
you gotta hear me out.
Sure.
No, but in reality, right? I think you and maybe any listeners know that I love Mason Rudolph. I really do think he's the best backup quarterback in the league. I think he positions the team so well to be able to come in and do what a backup quarterback is supposed to do: calmly lead a team, not make mistakes, get in there and win games. I saw a stat that said something last year or a few seasons ago. I don't know. He came in to 3 different games and he won all 3 of those games, and he just yeah, I think he is a really, really great backup quarterback. Now,
Yeah.
with regards to everything that's going on in the quarterback room, right? I think really there's 2 schools of thought here. There's the first one, which is Aaron Rodgers is our QB1,
Yep.
which is totally right. Aaron Rodgers is our QB1. If he's healthy, he should play moving forward. And regardless of what you think of Mason Rudolph, whether you think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread or he's just a good, solid backup quarterback, still Aaron Rodgers is our QB1 moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I disagree with that at all. I think that's the move. That said, the other school of thought here is where people are actually kind of breaking things down, looking at tape, looking at film, and they're saying, okay, it actually does look like Aaron Rodgers is kind of inflicting some some pressure upon himself, the way he
Yeah.
scrambles around the pocket. The last couple of weeks, his throws haven't looked that good. If you look at things from weeks 1 through 8 versus weeks 9 through 11, you look at his EPA, you look at other stats, and it just doesn't look as clean. And you get a guy like Mason, he comes in, he looks calm, he makes throws, goes through his reads, whatever. And so there are people, very much so, I'm reading, that are like, move forward with Mason and done with Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers. Now, I love Mason, and I'm maybe to your surprise, I'm not in that school of thought. I'm not in the latter there. I do think Aaron Rodgers is your QB1 moving forward for this year. However, if Aaron Rodgers is not 100% healthy, I think you start Mason Rudolph this week. And I think there's no reason not to do that, because Mason Rudolph looked great, proved that he can play, proves he has chemistry with some of these players,
Yeah.
right? And he has a really good track record with the Steelers. I worry because Aaron Rodgers, he already had that finger issue, right?
Yep.
I think it's
Before
a
the Colts
known
game.
I think it's a known issue that Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old, and he's not actively standing in the pocket and trying to take hits.
No.
And an injury to, granted, your non-throwing hand, but an injury to your wrist is going to make you even more less likely to want to or be able to take a hit. And so with all of that like going through his mind, there's no reason to me why you wouldn't sit Aaron Rodgers, let him get fully healthy, and play Mason Rudolph. So that's where I am right now. I'm not saying that Mason Rudolph should take Aaron Rodgers' role as QB1 over. I don't think that's the case. But I think for this game, I think you roll with Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I am shocked that that is your opinion. I did think you would be Mason full steam ahead. Let's go. And to be honest with you, I was gonna go like refute it, but at the same time, I sort of see it. The offense did look better. Granted, it was two offensive possessions, but a 15-play, 61-yard drive for a field goal and a 12-play, 65-yard drive for a touchdown, 7.5 minutes and 6 minutes long were fantastic, and the offense looked better than it had the whole game. But there is the whole thing where Mason didn't really do a whole lot that Aaron wasn't doing. He only had one throw over 5 yards or over 6 yards. Everything else was behind the line of scrimmage, and guys made plays. I mean,
Yep.
the pass to Roman Wilson, the 15-yarder, was great. But other than that, it was Kenneth Gainwell making plays, some other guys
Yards
making
after
plays.
catch. Yep.
Right,
Totally get it.
and he had, I think, 123 yards after the catch. But if you're going to say that, then you have to say what Aaron Rodgers had. And I think we had 225 yards after the catch out of our 243 for the game. So that's all but 18 yards were after the catch in this game. So it's not like Aaron Rodgers was throwing downfield either. So that's where I agree. Mason played great. He looked comfortable. He did look better than Aaron in that regard, where he stood in the pocket and was willing to work through progressions like a statue, like he wants to be a pocket passer and make some throws. Whereas Aaron's way too quick to move or way too quick to just give up on the play and dump it off. I completely agree. But that's where I'm hoping that Aaron looked at this game and goes, okay, hold on a second. Arthur Smith is calling some decent plays that have some decent concepts. And if I just sit here and take another second, or I don't get off my first or second read too quickly, these guys get open at times. Not all the time,
Yeah.
but at times they get open. And I am hoping this opens his eyes a little bit to make him see how well this offense can run if he changes his style of play a little bit. Now, I'm with you. If Aaron Rodgers isn't healthy, which maybe we should mention that, he has a small fracture in his wrist, non-throwing wrist, if you weren't aware. He doesn't need surgery. They're saying he's 50-50. This is Tuesday. They're saying he's 50-50 to play this Sunday. I agree. If he's not healthy, I'm fully comfortable playing Mason Rudolph this weekend, maybe even next weekend if we have to. But if we're going to go for far in this season, I do think we need Aaron Rodgers over Mason Rudolph. And that's not a discredit to Mason Rudolph. That's just Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers for a reason. But I
Yeah.
do hope
And
this opens his eyes.
no, and that's the nature of their roles, right? Like Aaron Rodgers knows he's QB1. Mason knows his role on the team right now is QB2. He steps in when it's needed, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. I found the stat. Mason Rudolph came in and started the last 3 games of the 2023 season for a
Yep.
Steelers team that had lost 4 of the last 5. We couldn't get 20 points on the board. He led them to 3 victories and the playoff push. So I think
Yeah.
like Mason offers a really, really great. Honestly, you can call me crazy, but I do think he's the, maybe I shouldn't say best or most
Yeah, not
talented
best,
or
but
whatever,
he's up
but I
there.
think he's the most reliable backup quarterback in the NFL. He comes in and he just plays really calm and collected. Like there's not any ounce of me when he's in the pocket that makes that I feel like he doesn't know what he's doing. He looks panicky. Like he
Yeah.
stands in there so calm. He goes through his progressions. He makes good solid throws. He has a great arm. There's an argument that
He does.
maybe he can stretch the field a little bit better. I don't know if I take that, but he can throw a really good deep ball, so we know that. I really would like just to see Aaron Rodgers get fully healthy. If he's truly 50-50 right now, let him rest. If he was like, I'm 80-20 and it's Tuesday, that's great. Then you'll probably get to be where you're close to 100% by game time. But if you're 50-50 and you only have a few more practices left for the week, I think you got to get Mason Rudolph in there. Now, the only other counter argument, is that Aaron Rodgers owns the Chicago Bears as
Yep.
much as Ben Roethlisberger owns the Cleveland Browns, right? So that makes him want to play, I think, like crazy. So
And that's where this gets weird,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think if this was any other week than Bears week that he would play.
Yeah.
I mean, now we should mention he supposedly wanted to come into the game in the second half, and the Steelers and Mike Tomlin told him no. And so he tried to come back into the game, and they said, nope, we're going with Mason. We trust Mason. We're going to stick with that. And again, you can question that. Same thing as Jalen Warren. Maybe that was the right move. I mean, Mason looked great, and we keep Aaron from getting hit more. But the fact that it's Bears week really, really, really complicates this, because that's the thing he's been circling. Other than the Packers game, that's probably the next game he circled this season. And he wants to go into Chicago and own them once more. And that's where I do think he's going to try to play, and I think he
Yeah,
might
I do
play.
too.
But to your point, I am very, very comfortable with Mason Rudolph for a week or two. For the whole season, maybe not, but I do think he could lead us, and I think if we get him a full week of practice, I think Mason Rudolph could play well enough to win us this game this weekend. Absolutely, and we'll see from there. But at the end of the day, I really think because it's the Bears, Aaron Rodgers is gonna get himself on the field.
So here's the challenge. There's I read something that Will Howard, since he's activated, is going to get more reps too. So now you have three guys in this conversation. I think it actually hurts us more if we go in and they're splitting reps amongst those three
True.
guys with the first team. I think and I hope that this team should be knowing what they're going to do for Sunday and playing their cards that way. Do you have any sense that that might be what's going on or not
Well,
going
I
on?
don't know. The only good thing is Rodgers is a veteran, right? So he doesn't necessarily need the reps. So he really just needs the reps to know if he can throw the ball.
True.
And so he might be able to do that in like individual drills or not team drills. I do think it is worth getting Will Howard some reps because he hasn't had a ton of reps since he's been hurt. And Mason Rudolph's a vet as well and had all of OTAs with this whole team. So it's not like Mason behind center is pretty normal to these players, which Calvin Austin actually said. He said he led us through all the OTAs and offseason workouts that they feel pretty comfortable with him back there. So he should get probably 70%. But working in Will Howard for the other 30%, I don't think is a bad idea. But I would totally leave Aaron Rodgers out. And then on Friday, have him throw a little bit and let him see what he thinks and go from there. But I don't really think he needs reps necessarily. So, yeah, I would devote it totally to Mason and Will Howard.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
We'll see. I don't know. That's why we're
Tomlin,
sitting here, though.
Tomlin didn't stick to anything. Yeah, he didn't stick to anything on his press
No.
conference on Tuesday. So we just got to wait and see. What else about the offense? Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's it. My comment about Arthur Smith, though, I think he did. I thought he called a pretty good game in the second half, and our offense really succeeded. Whether it was Mason or Arthur, I don't know, but it looked a lot better than it has in a few weeks. So good for Arthur.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, we'll talk defense in a second. We'll glaze through special teams because not too much to talk about. Boz 2 for 2, 4 for 4 on his extra points. Short field goals. Corliss Waitman 3 punts, average of 44 yards. What I think is notable here is, did you catch who our punt returner was? Was Calvin Austin. So I think there's a little bit of foreshadowing that you kind of called here is let's have Calvin Austin kind of focus on punt returns and maybe move over to more of a slot role or a little bit out of that wide receiver 2 role, get Roman to step in, which we saw. And so I think you called that pretty well.
I will say, though, I do think he was back there for the first punt, but he ended up going out of the game with a concussion. Yeah, okay, I'm looking here. So the first punt of the game for the Browns was in the second quarter. It was a 55-yard punt for a touchback. I do think Keyshawn Williams was back there, but didn't. And then he got hurt. He got hurt at some point during the game. He went out with a concussion. So I think he might have started as the punt returner, but then they went to Calvin Austin. So I don't know if I was completely right, but I think now moving forward.
Just trying to give you a little credit. You know?
I know, I appreciate it. But I think moving forward, they might stick with Calvin Austin.
Okay. All right. Let's talk defense because I think we led in at the very beginning. This is a great game by the Steelers defense, especially when you have guys that like James Pierre that played out of their mind.
Oh, my goodness.
But I think the headline here, 2 touchdowns by the defense, 1 touchdown allowed, 12 points on the board to an offense that has been putting up pretty consistently 30-plus points. Again, Joe Flacco led. But you have some of the best weapons in the NFL, and pretty consistently they're scoring a lot of points. So this, I think, and again, when we look at what happened on Thursday Night Football against the Bengals, like significant adjustment. So I saw a few things. It definitely looked like we played a lot more zone rather than man. I know that's something that you've kind of been harping on a little bit. But what's your overall take with how you kind of saw the defense play and what stood out to you?
Man, the defense looked so much better. They simplified everything. Like we talked about that they played a bunch of coverages in the Thursday night game, but it was almost too complicated that they didn't know where they were supposed to be. In this one, they were playing a lot of too high safety, a lot of cover two, and they started doing that with Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar in the back, and it's worked out great. Joe Flacco, when he was targeting cornerbacks this game, he had a 39.6 QB rating. He had an 103.8. in the Thursday night game. From what Alex Kozora said, our corners, Joey Porter Jr., James Pierre, and Brandon Echols allowed 3 catches on 11 targets. That's going against Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I mean, Jamar Chase had 18 catches on us, I think, in the game on Thursday night, and he only had 3 in this game.
On
And one
10
of them
targets.
on 10 targets, and one of them was a 16-yard catch in garbage time. So really, he was held to 2 for 14 in meaningful football. I just thought the defense played phenomenal, and we only had 1 sack. We were around Joe Flacco a lot and pressuring him, but it wasn't like we were just on the sack brigade and we were just sacking him every play. Like, these guys had to cover, and they really did. James Pierre played awesome again. Brandon Echols really stepped up. Joey Porter Jr. played one of the best games I think he's played in a while.
No penalties, too.
No penalties, and he was. So I like his mentality because a corner's supposed to be cocky because it's the hardest position to play in sports, or at least in the NFL, maybe quarterback. But when you make a play, you should talk. But when you make a play and then go give up 3 penalties afterwards, that's when you shouldn't talk. But I love that he was chatting up Jamar Chase the entire game and going after him. And I thought all 3 of them played phenomenal. Kyle Duggar obviously had the 73-yard pick six, the last 3 safeties to do it for the Steelers. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
Troy Polamalu, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Kyle Duggar. I mean, it's awesome, man. I thought the defense played phenomenal.
Yeah, I think a few things to add. Totally agree with all your points. First off, I think it might, we might come to realize that Kyle Duggar was the best acquisition at the trade deadline. Granted, we did it a week before or a few days before the actual trade deadline. And not just the best acquisition for our team, perhaps one of the best acquisitions across the entire NFL. He has really made himself known. Of course, he made this really, really big splash play, but when you have a guy like Deshaun Elliott go down and you have a lot of change going on at the safety position, right? We've cycled through Juan Thornhill, Chuck Clark. We've had our big acquisitions that we brought in cycle through the safety position. And now you have a guy, Kyle Duggar. We've had Jabril Peppers play a little bit. Like, to have a guy that's come in and made that much of a statement, we look at what the defense has done the last few weeks. It's tremendously, tremendously different. So he has been great. Another guy, Nick Herbig. Alex Highsmith obviously out this game, right? Nick Herbig, I think 94% of the snaps is what I saw.
More than T.J. Watt.
And he played a hell of a game. Keanu Benton playing really, really great football right now. In his first 7 games this season, he had 6 total pressures. In the last 3 games, he has had 9 total pressures. So Keanu Benton is just playing really, really good football himself. So this was a great, great holistic performance by the defense. I mean, all around, corners, safeties, the linebacking core, the defensive line, really, really great. Again, 12 points to a team that was kind of top tier in terms of points scored per each week. Great to see this kind of clicking finally happen, right? They're playing like the defense that we thought they would and should at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say we have to give some credit to Terrell Austin, especially in the 2 games, the 2 halves of this game, right? The first drive when we gave up the touchdown on their opening drive, they had 2 long third down conversions, and they ended up going 5 for 8 on third downs in the first half. Well, in the second half, they were 2 for 7. And the simplifying of coverages, the going to get or implementing Kyle Duggar, putting Jalen Ramsey at safety, that has completely changed the outlook of our secondary and our defense as a whole. And I do want to give Terrell Austin, because we rip him apart a lot on this,
We do.
and even Mike Tomlin, but he does deserve some credit with how these guys are playing now. So there is one negative to this game.
Let's hear it.
And maybe we sold out for the pass because, you know, it is Jamar Chase, it is T. Higgins, it is Joe Flacco. But we did give up almost 5 yards a carry, 22 for 105. And Chase Brown had 99 yards himself. So that's something we need to clean up. It's been an issue kind of most of the year. We sort of figured it out with the Indy game. Gave up a lot to the Chargers as well. But that is the one negative, I think, of the game, is just the run defense seems a little porous.
I think that's a fair point to bring up, because it's very much overshadowed just by everything else that happened. Now, we played well enough that wasn't an issue, but when the ground game is going, that's definitely something to kind of be worried about. So I like that you brought it up. Do you want to transition that into a Balls of Steel and a Jag-off, or do you have anything else you kind of want to add for the game?
I'm good. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, you just made a negative remark, so why don't you build on that and hit me with a Jag-off if you have one? I might be
Oh,
going I might I might be going in the same direction as you. I think it's pretty clear here.
I feel like we have to, right? I wasn't going to, but I think we have to. Jamar
Yeah,
Chase gets it.
yeah,
Is that
mine
that's
too.
what you're talking? All right.
Double down.
So if for any of you that didn't see, Jalen Ramsey got thrown out of this game for fighting with Jamar Chase. It ends up coming out that Jamar Chase spit on Jalen Ramsey, which is why Jalen Ramsey punched him, and that's just inexcusable. And he had a horrible game to begin with, 3 for 30 on 10 targets. But then to spit on somebody, and he stole his mouth guard the play before, a couple plays before, like I don't know. That's just something you don't really do. And I actually loved Mike Tomlin's comment on it. He said, "Hey, you got to react how you got to react. If somebody's going to spit on you, you do what you feel is necessary." And that's a good leader right there in that situation because, yeah, I mean, getting spit on by another man is what nobody wants to experience. So Jamar Chase definitely deserves the jag off
Yeah,
this week.
double down for me. There's a lot of talk right now amongst sports analysts that are saying, and not just across football, across really all sports. That's like the lowest thing that you can do. It's like the most
Yeah.
classless, disrespectful thing that you can do is to spit on someone. And what's even more frustrating about this is that Jamar Chase like denied it right off the get
Right.
go, and there's the film right there that shows him blatantly spitting. And he tried to say, if I was going to spit on him, I would have spit in his face instead of on his shirt. And I was like, whatever.
And
So
it's like
he's
he
trying to
did try. He
appeal.
just hit the face mask. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, come
yeah.
on,
So
dude.
that was a classless Bengals act to me.
Yeah.
Brought back, you know, Pac-Man Jones, Vontez Burfict, all those, those bad memories of the Bengal
Yeah.
teams that I feel like were just trashy. And I didn't really have anything against Jamar Chase. I liked him as a player.
Me
I think
too.
he's really talented, and that is kind of definitely a punch in the gut there. So Jamar Chase gets it for me.
And I will say for Jalen Ramsey, I'm glad that video came out because he looked kind of bad in this whole
He
when
did.
he got thrown out and how heated he was. He looked like the bad guy in the whole situation. So I'm glad he was able to
Yeah.
the truth was able to come out.
Well, and there's a video beforehand too. The play before is Jamar Chase actually yanks his mouth guard out,
Right.
or maybe it's hanging from his helmet and he
No,
pulls
yeah,
it.
he yanked it. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jamar Chase is classless individual. Okay, I was gonna say if we weren't gonna double down to at least give an honorable mention
Yeah.
for a jag-off of the week to the Cleveland Browns.
I
They were
like
up
that.
16-10 against the Ravens, and that would have been really nice for the Browns to beat the Ravens. Up 16-10 going into the fourth quarter, and they're leading that whole game, and ultimately just blew it. Granted, they had Shitter Sanders come in as quarterback, and he looked probably like the worst quarterback the NFL has ever seen. But
Might be a bit exaggerated, but yeah, he didn't look good.
I saw like a scatter plot thing that Shitter Sanders was all the way down here, and everyone else was up here. So,
I believe
um,
that.
anywho, that's just an honorable mention. But for the stats, double down on Jamar.
Oh yeah, have to be.
I actually need you to go first on
Ah,
the balls of steel. I do.
okay. All right. I had two, but I'll just pick one, and it's kind of what we've already been talking about. And to be honest with you, if I didn't pick him last week, I was going to pick him this week. James Pierre is who I would pick as an individual, but I won't do that 2 weeks in a row. I'm going to pick a more general one. The whole secondary. I
Okay.
thought the secondary played phenomenal, as we've already touched on, and I think it is worth mentioning that. I mean, it wasn't just the pick six; the fumble was all them too. Eccles forced the fumble, and James Pierre returned it. I will say, I wish he wouldn't do the flip into the end zone. He did not land it, and he looked like he was going to get hurt. It was cool that he didn't get hurt, but it didn't. We can't get him hurt. So, yeah, I'm going to give it to the whole secondary.
Okay, I like it. Fair enough. Um, so I think you know where this is going,
I know it's not anymore.
and you think that it's going to go to our 6'5", 235-pound, 8-year vet backup quarterback Mason Rudolph. But listen, it's not going to, and that's nothing against Mason. I think in any other game, he very well could deserve it. I think there's arguments that he does deserve it here. I'm gonna base any potential balls of steel for Mason Rudolph are going to be based on next week if he plays. I want to evaluate that performance.
Good.
Um, at the end of the day, I think Mason Rudolph did what you need and what you want. So I'm going to give it to a guy who just really, really stood out for me in this game, and that's Darnell Washington.
Love it.
Darnell Washington, 4 catches for 67 yards. Obviously, we talked about the angry run that he had, the huge 31-yard play, and that was awesome. Where he stiff armed one guy, shouldered another guy, and then and then totally obliterated a third guy. Right?
Yeah.
Awesome play. But I think the one play that maybe is forgotten was a 3rd and 17 conversion where Darnell Washington was given the ball like 3 yards from the line of scrimmage, and he ran hard.
Yeah.
And he got through a couple defenders, ultimately diving for the first down to get us a conversion on 3rd and 17, which is not something that the Steelers typically do. Typically, the Steelers do check that ball down, but we don't get 17 yards on that.
Yeah.
It's the other teams that convert those against us. So that was really, really great to see. Darnell Washington just had a solid game. I love the stat that you said where he gets 40 or more snaps. We're now 9-0. That is just going to continue to move. And granted, it's scheme focused, but I love seeing Darnell Washington in the game. He's a great blocker. He's an insane pass catcher.
Yep.
And now we can see that this guy can move. I saw something that said he ran like a 4.6 or a 4.7 at his size. So
Crazy.
To have the skill set that he does, let's keep using him. This was a phenomenal game for Darnell Washington. I love to see it. He was our leading receiver outside of Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah.
And Gainwell had a 28-yard run himself. So I'm giving it to Darnell Washington. I think very well deserved.
And I'm glad you highlighted that 17-yard, that 3rd and 17, because if you look at it, we were only up 10-9 at that point, halfway through the third, and we were about to punt it back, and they had just kicked the field goal to get it down to 1 point. And because he converted that 3rd and 17, we were able to kick a 30-yard field goal and take a 13-9 lead. And that just completely, I think it changed the momentum of the game. And that's how big that play was and how big Darnell Washington was. So, yeah, he deserves all the love.
Cool. I love it. Congrats, Darnell. Congrats, secondary. Good game. We need to see this kind of continue to move forward.
We did.
Which will segue us into our closing segment here to kind of preview this Bears game. We are going to Chicago. I'm going to Chicago. I'm going to see this game in person, which will be awesome. Steelers are 3-point underdogs, which we love to see. But Chicago's a pretty good team this year. Some might say it's a fraudulent 7-3, but they are 7-3 and they are in first place in the NFC North. The way this matchup is looking right now, at least according to ESPN, is kind of right down the middle in terms of predictions. Caleb Love is playing Caleb Williams. Sorry, Caleb Love. I'm talking basketball over here. Caleb Williams is having a pretty good year. He's in a good offensive system with the new coach that they have in Chicago, and he's proven to be a pretty mobile, pretty versatile quarterback. 13 touchdowns on the year, only 4 interceptions, which I would have thought he would have had a lot more. Completion percentage isn't as high, but he's definitely having himself a pretty good year. They have a good run game on the ground when DeAndre Swift and is healthy, but they also have a couple other guys back there, and their wide receiver group is pretty solid too. So this is an interesting game for the Steelers. I think on paper, everything to me says the Steelers can and will win this game, but we're traditionally or historically not really a good team in Chicago, and that worries me a little bit. Now, we have this quarterback dilemma that I think we talked about a little bit beforehand. I had the stats up earlier in terms of Aaron Rodgers' record against the Bears. Let me pull it up really quick. He's 24-5 all time against the Bears with 64 touchdowns and only 10 interceptions. So this is a game Aaron Rodgers wants to play. We got to see if he's going to play. If not, if you can't already tell, I have the full utmost confidence in Mason Rudolph to lead this team to victory, and I feel pretty good about this game. I'm excited to see it in person, and the weather looks like it's going to be good, looking like 50 and sunny as of right now, which should be great Chicago football weather for late November. So I'm really excited for the game, and I think and I hope we can get it done. But let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it should be a good game. They're a pretty big offensive team. They score a lot of points. They're 8th in the league, scoring about a little over a point more than we do a game at 25.8. They're really good on the ground, like you said, second in the league running the ball, 146 yards a game. We need to shore up our run defense for sure. And they're 13th passing the ball. Caleb Williams has had a good year and has really come on, especially in clutch time lately. So let's see what our defense can do against that. On the flip side, their defense has struggled a little bit from the majority of the year. They're 26th in points given up, giving up 26 a game. They're 23rd against the pass and 25th against the run, but they have played better of recent. They only gave up 17 points to the Vikings last week, 20 to the Giants the week before, although that was a lot of Russell Wilson. But the week before that, they gave up 42 to the Bengals. So I think they're starting to get healthy on the defensive side of the ball to make them a little bit better, but their defense is definitely their weakness. So whoever's at quarterback, whether it's Mason or Aaron, we definitely need to take advantage of their holes on the defensive side. I think this could be I think it's going to end up being like a normal Steelers game. We're going to get below 20. We're not going to put up 30 again. But I do think the Steelers can pull this out. I think the Steelers come away with a 24-20 victory in this one. This is a really key game because the Ravens play the Jets. And the Ravens, if you haven't looked, they're only a game behind us. And I know we play them in 3 weeks, but they're only a game behind us and they play the Jets. So you can pretty much chalk them up to a win. We need to win this game to keep that game lead. So really big game for the Steelers, and I think we come away with a victory.
Yeah, listen, the last 5 of the 7 wins that the Bears have are one possession wins.
Yep.
That's how the Steelers play football too, right?
Yep.
Is we play in these close games, and typically a lot of the one possession games are some of the lower scoring games. So this very well could be, could be Pittsburgh Steelers football to a T. I'm going to go with my bold prediction. I think Jaylen Warren gets 100 yards on the ground, 100 yards rushing. I think it's going to be that type of game for him, especially if Mason Rudolph is in. I do think that they're going to scheme the ball a little bit more towards Jaylen from a rushing perspective. And he's hot. When he's hot, man, he's playing really, really well. I'd love to see a big, maybe a detailed bold prediction would be like we get a really good splash play from Jaylen Warren that gets us up there to 100 total yards for him rushing. That's what I think could happen, and I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that would be awesome, Jaylen Warren. Hopefully he's healthy enough and he keeps going. I'm gonna go really bold here, and I'm gonna try to be the oracle and predict what the Steelers are gonna do at quarterback. I'm gonna predict Aaron Rodgers forces his way onto the field. And I'm going to predict Aaron Rodgers, because it's the Bears, is going to have a really, really good game. The guy has 7,000 passing yards against the Bears. If what I'm seeing is accurate, that's a lot. And divided by 29, he averages like 240 a game against them. I'm going to predict Aaron Rodgers throws for 250 against them.
Okay, I love it.
Now I will say
we'll void it if Mason plays. But you need like a backup prediction. Like if Mason goes in, you think Mason matches that stat line?
Yeah, maybe I'll say either quarterback, because even if Aaron doesn't play, his ownership of the Bears will transfer to Mason for the week.
It's gonna fuel Mason enough to get in there.
Yeah.
All right, man. I love it. I'm really excited to go. Looking forward to kind of giving you a recap.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
We'll be able to jump on and record Thanksgiving week, and that'll be a lot of fun. So very much looking forward to the Steelers this weekend in Chicago, and hope we get that W. It'd be great to move to 7-4, position ourselves really nicely, because we've said it every week, but that schedule gets harder and harder. Bills, Ravens twice, Lions. There's a lot left in that schedule for us, so we got to stack up the wins where we can. And I do think this is a winnable game. I do not think the Bears, not any discredit to them, but I don't think they're the 7-3 team that their record shows. So I think we can get it done. I completely agree. All right. Well, let's let it ride. Let's hope for the best. Be sure to send pictures, and I'll be sure to keep you updated. And we'll go from there. So, as always, we thank everyone for listening, for watching. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everyone. Peace.